Welcome to the DKM podcast, the Don't Know Much podcast, where we don't know much about anything, but what we do know is that today, at least for me, subjectively, this is what I know, that today is a slow Sunday. I'm glad my weekends feel a little bit slow sometimes. This weekend particularly was that, but today feels really slow. As the recording of this episode 20, we're recording on a Sunday. Dude, I'm just vibing. I'm just doing my own thing. Saturday was chill, going to the gym, playing basketball, but it all felt slow. These are one of those weekends where you're like, this is exactly the kind of weekend I wanted. Just a nice and chill one. Uh, all I've been doing is just even now all I'm really doing is just playing video games, but that's all I really want. Just
What games
chill.
you playing, Marcos?
Judge me harshly for this one, but
Okay.
I just been just playing Fallout 76.
Yeah, but I know you have I know you have a humiliation kink, so like I'm not gonna play that fucking game with you.
Damn. But I am playing
I
Fallout
see what you're
76.
doing, you little prankster, you little goober. I see what you were doing.
I just I've been having fun with Fallout 76 just because of the friends. Just playing with friends and it's been fun. But other than that, the only other game I've been playing is just Smash Bros. Also with friends. We're playing
Which one?
Ultimate.
Okay.
Just
I'm not
playing
gonna lie though, I haven't touched Ultimate in a long time. I played a little bit of it when Sora got announced because I was really excited. He definitely was one of my favorite characters revealed for the DLC. But I don't know. I play Smash Bros like super casually. Ultimate was gonna be the game I was trying to get into the competitive scene, but then I realized like, man, fuck this. I'm not nowhere near as committed into playing this game as much as I thought I was. And at the time, working overnight security with your weekends taken up, it's like, well, there goes my tournament options. So I play. I've always been more of a casual Smash player, but I've always been more casual for fighting games. But I would like to try getting into competing someday. But yeah, generally speaking, when it comes to playing Smash Brothers, I prefer maybe play a little bit online, getting curb stomped, and then maybe play with you guys because that's just a little. This is more fun to have. It's just a local multiplayer.
Yeah, I'm in one of those camps where I don't really like. I like the competitive scene, but I just prefer being a spectator more than anything. I don't really care about going hard in the paint when it comes to actually playing. I don't have the ability to have a just constantly training and constantly going into this. Like it's fine and all. I can respect those who do it. It's just it's not for me. I don't think I have the mental energy or the patience to just keep playing the same game over and over and over again just to better myself. Like that doesn't seem like something I can do. Not because I don't want to do it. It's just one of those things where like I'll probably get bored of it. It's like I don't. It's definitely not
That's
for
sort
me.
of a that's a good question to ask. I've always wanted to have like a competitive player on our podcast. Any like FGC or any pro players out there listening to us, I would totally love to have a guest on the line. I always want to ask them like so many questions. Like, at what point does like being competitive? Do you find the aspect of the game so fun that you like being competitive, or does the competitive start to be your fun? Like maybe some people don't care too much about the game; they just care about competing. That they don't really care about what game they're playing. I'm talking about like multi talented people that could hop between games over and over, like between so many different genres like Sonic Fox. I've always been very curious because it's just like I'm in the camp that feels like that once you do something so well and then you love doing it. Let's say you play the guitar, you love playing the guitar because it's a way to express yourself. It's a good way to like it's what you love to do. And I was talking about this with a couple friends of mine. We were talking about how like difficult it is for content creators to make a living nowadays, and that's why they got to take sponsorships, part-time jobs, and yada 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 because of all these little factors like ad gates and all these little limited sponsorship offers and things like that. There's always been this question of when you do something you love for fun, and then that thing you do for fun becomes your source of income and it's your sense of worth and living, and you're paying the bills to put it lightly. You're no longer just like I'm gonna write a song because I'm really passionate and I really care about it. You're now thinking like, oh shit, and I gotta write a song and two more other songs to release this album because my contract is getting my ass about this. And I just always wondering, like, because to me, that's what I've always been scared of, like getting into a competitive scene. Because I've seen people that get really competitive and then they're just miserable. They're not having fun. The game pisses them off. The game is actively making their life more difficult because maybe they're doing some balance changes or things like that. Like, it sucks for me because I had a lot of friends who played Street Fighter and they really like a character, but then as the patches went on, the character got nerfed and nerfed and nerfed to the point where they're just like, man, fuck this. This is like the one character I like to play. I don't want to play anybody else. That they just throw up their hands and say, fuck this shit. I don't want to play this anymore. I think a lot of like Street Fighter 5 players did that.
Yeah. When it comes to the whole competitive aspect of it, uh, when it comes to people, and you can even see it, there's a whole bunch of documentaries of online documentaries of just gaming and all that jazz. People play the game because they like the game, then they get into the whole scene, where it's like, hey, I just want to play some video games with people who are at my level or better, and then they just start playing, and then it becomes more of like a show off type of thing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna beat this guy, I'm gonna be better than this guy, I'm gonna train to be better than that guy, whatever, and so on and so forth. They just want to be the best, and then what really drives them forward, even though they're burnt out, like a lot, is not so much the game itself, but the game plus the scene, plus the attention, plus everything else. It's one of those things where you're just like, uh
You're boxed in.
it's not boxed in. It's more so if you just removed one aspect of it, you'll still enjoy it. Like if I remove the competitive scene, you'll still enjoy the game, but you won't enjoy it to the same level. If I remove the game itself, you'll still love the competitive scene of it, like any other form of competitive scene, because you've been there. You know what it's like. You know what it takes to get to that level. An indie game, so it's more so a combination of things that you just learn to adapt, and you just become drenched in this whole this new world, this world of like of just constant hard workmanship, which then obviously there's some drama involved in anything. Obviously, we have issues like with it, like fighters talking smack. They don't know like what do you call it? They don't really know how to like keep it cool outside of the match. It's one of those things where like it's just a whole part about being human, and it's one of those things where I know people enjoy, what do you call it? The one game and the community the game has created. That's why it's kind of hard for like when Nintendo was being a really naughty little girl, when it came to like censorship, and even with not like what was it with the whole Splatoon event where a bunch of people in the final bracket of the tournament naming themselves Free Melee and all that stuff, and then Nintendo was like, no, you can't do this, and people were just getting upset over it. Like even like if you were a Smash Bros player who also plays competitively, like a good example is like Hungry Box, right? He obviously didn't like what Nintendo was doing, but like, what can he do? Like, Smash is his bread and butter. Smash Bros is his bread and butter. There's nothing he can do except just like be against it, but continue to grind what he's got to grind. And that's one of the things where people like have to like put their worth, like either in their ethics or into like what they made their career out of, which is fine. I'm not gonna give like diss anyone, but like being a competitive player, it's one of those things where like you become this big gear in this whole cog, this whole community, and it's inspiring, but it's also something I don't think I could do. Like speedrunning, right? I don't think I can like truly do speedrunning to like be a top 10 player. Like I don't think I have that mentality. I don't think I have that patience, etc., etc., etc. And I respect those who do speedrunning. Like it's a work of art, dude. But I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, I think for me, like as far as speedrunning goes, like I'm more of a super casual guy. I don't think I've ever like actively attempted to speedrun. Maybe there's like some speedrun time trial mechanics and certain games. Like do you remember that little fun thing that Johnny and Clement used to do, where they would do the I think it was called 60-second acts, where it was like how far you could get into an act in Sonic Generations. That was a really fun thing to do for a short while if you had like friends who were actively competing with you. But if it were up to me, I think like the only game I could think of I might try to give a shot speedrunning would probably Aladdin on Super Nintendo. I beat that game so many times as a kid that I've always tried to see how fast I could beat it because it's a super short game. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like it's one of those things where it's like like, and you also have to understand that it's a broad spectrum. Not everybody who agrees with the Free Melee thing and all this sort of stuff. Some people are just super casual fans. Like I can't, I've never been one to be like, oh, you can't support Nintendo because they didn't support Melee and fuck Nintendo. Da, 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 you shouldn't buy their games. I never cared about that because it's like just because you may not agree to the extent that I do doesn't mean that you might not be like, all right, then I'm just gonna give up on Nintendo altogether. It's just a lose-lose situation. Going back with the Hungry Box example, your entire brand and your name and everything is based on one game off of one franchise off of one company, and in any moment Nintendo could just snap their fingers and be like, all right, copyright claim everything, you're banned from every tournament, yada yada yada. It's a crapshoot, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, basically.
And it's just one of those things where it's like it happens, and it's really aggravating. Where it's like, someone in the competitive, like I've been watching this guy on Twitter a lot named Jake, who basically does like video game news, but he's more focused on the competitive side of things. And there's a lot of crazy shit that happens in the tournaments that we don't watch, because you and me probably don't watch the Fortnite League, the Counter-Strike stuff, but I see some pretty crazy shit that happened in those kind of tournaments.
I just watch clips, highlights and stuff.
Yeah, but that's something that like someone has to show me, and like I'm not gonna actively search for that kind of stuff. But there's some pretty crazy shit that happens in those tournaments. But yeah, to move on from this topic, long story short, doing something you love is great. I mean, I'm in that camp too. I hate working at a job that you don't like and then you love doing it, but then when that thing becomes your lifeline and then it becomes your main source of income and how you're gonna pay your bills and keep the lights on and stuff like that, there's that risk, or you just kind of get jaded and bored. I mean, like how many streamers that try to swap it up with a different game because maybe they're just bored of the game that they're known for, and then their views plummet, and then they start having hard times, or maybe the ad revenue starts to dry up a little bit, and then they start putting more ads. It's all these different things. There's a great article I can show you later, Marcos, that I read a little bit of it, where it's just talking about how like this kind of shaky ground, and this is talking about like on the smaller scale. This is not even talking like people with contracts that are laid off in a good condition, or God forbid they just get removed from the contract. But yeah, that's pretty much my takeaway from everything. I am a casual gamer. I play games just casually, and not by like, I'm not the Candy Crush, like I'm gonna fuck your mom kind of casual. Well, I'm still fuck your mom, but I mean, like, I'm not gonna be playing Candy Crush.
A good example when it comes to the whole, if you do what you love as a job, you'll never work a day in your life. I never really understood that quote because, if you're someone who loves baking, pastries or desserts or etc., and that becomes your job, there's going to be a point where there'll be days where some customer's going to just give you lip. He's going to talk sweet to you, and then you're like, hey, buddy, this is not, we're not doing this here. And they're like, well, yeah, but I'm the customer, etc., etc., etc. And it's one of those things where like an extra component gets thrown in there, and obviously you can't really have too much of a bad reputation on your business or whatever you're doing as a job, which is also your hobby. And it's one
But
of those.
do you make the argument though that could just be the location where you're working at? Maybe
Not
if you were a baker
Not
on
even a
YouTube.
location. A good example is this. All right, so let's just say I like working on cars, right? Or maybe I like working I like, how about this? A good one. I like doing art commissions, right? I like doing art and all that stuff, right? It's one of those
Hmm.
things where I do well and all that stuff, right? But I have sort of a name for myself. Everyone doesn't know me, but some people in some communities kind of know me. They're like, "Oh, yeah, 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 we know this guy," and they'll commission me, right? Sure. Will it pay for the next year's bills? No, not really, but I'm having fun, and then people will come at you with a some sort of attitude. Some people will say, "Hey, this is not what I ordered. I want a free art piece now." Like people take advantage. Just when you go
Of
public and
course,
all that
yeah, you're
stuff,
gonna
like
deal with
that's
some shitty people. Exactly.
yeah. And it's one of those things where obviously, like, we need to make a new phrasing for like, you never work a day in your life. Like, no, you'll still be work. It's just it won't be as bothersome as if you're working a typical 9 to 5 at a doing retail or something.
Or a
Who
job that
knows?
you absolutely don't care. I mean, like, I get where you're coming from, Marcos. I guess my thing would be like, when I'm in the groove and when I'm in the zone and everything, this is the most fun shit in the world. But getting started has always been the hardest part for me, right? For me, I'm just like, a good example is like lately I've been doing a lot of like thinking lately about like what I want to do in my life, and be like, man, I can't be doing this 9 to 5 grind and working on these like dead end jobs or no career path or nothing to grow off on.
Right.
So I've been thinking about getting back into IT and like getting myself some sort of certification or some sort of paperwork under my belt, so I could like wake up every day and be like, okay, when I wake up, I'm gonna work on this, and that, and not just, okay, I gotta wake up, go to work, and then do a job that I hate because I gotta keep the lights going. You need something to motivate you, to keep you out of bed. But that also brings up the point where like shit could happen. You either get depressed, or something happens on your YouTube channel, or some sort of drama or some bullshit kind of takes the wind out of your sails.
Yeah.
And to me, I think what it is, just some people like work so hard to climb up to the top, and maybe they finally get to the point, but then maybe they're just like realizing, damn, this isn't making me happy. I'm still kind of depressed. I'm still got unmotivated. I'm kind of like don't have that drive anymore, and that's sort of like the difficult thing, because you're always working, you're always going to be working. It's just people are never, but the difference is that you're happy that you're working towards something, even in the worst of cases. If a render fucks up, if some projects get screwed over, some people push back the deadline, yada yada yada, it's still aggravating. You're going to deal with those things because that's just a human element you got to deal with. But to people who do what they love to do, they'll just look at it and be like, man, this is really fucking pissing me off. But then you tell them, hey, do you want to go back to working 9 to 5? They're going to probably be like, fuck that. No, because I'd rather be doing this. Because I'd rather be frustrated working on something I care about rather than being frustrated on something I absolutely do not give a shit about.
Yeah, I get it. And it's one of those things where eventually you'll be put into the same loop, doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's going to get to you at one point, and you're just going to be like, I don't like this. I don't like doing this. What am I even doing, type of thing, right? If I tell someone, like, hey, you like working with your hands, you like doing everything with your hands, you like getting dirty, knee deep in whatever you gotta do, cool. But you did such a great job, we're gonna promote you to manager. Now you get to sit behind the desk and take a chill. And the guy's like, all right, cool, better pay, and I get to chill. And then like halfway through the year, he's like, dude, I'm bored as hell. I don't want to do this paper pushing stuff. I want to like work. And yeah, it's one of those things where like it's you're still working the same field you're in, but like it's changed a bit now, and you just don't like it. So yeah, it's one of those things I just think about. Like we've talked about like how streamers have burnouts or things happen in life where like they have to change out their schedule, which leads to like you just mentioned earlier in this episode, a drop in viewership, a drop in
Interest,
retentions. Yeah, exactly. Which I find weird. Like people, hey, you're a game a streamer. That's how you got popular, and you're gonna keep playing this game because it's giving you the views. But now you want to play game B, game C, game D, because it's one of those games where you liked playing when you were a kid, or you like playing before you started streaming. And then people are like, yeah, well, I'm not gonna watch this, and it kind of sucks. Like it's in people's heads, but we already talked about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about it multiple times, so we'll just move on from that. It seems like a fun world, but it's just you're replacing one job with another, but you're doing something you care about until you stop caring about it, and now you're really fucked.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, as far as what I've been playing, I have been enjoying Majora's Mask. I recently got Neryl's texture pack installed, and it's been great. It's really good. I've always been in the camp that's like whenever a game gets remade or there's any like mods or anything like that, I always argue that the art style should be faithful to the original game. I've always been a stickler. I hate the whole like Unreal Engine, like Super Mario Sunshine on Unreal. Nintendo hired it just makes me cringe because it's like this is just looks really awkward because you're mixing weird, the cartoony art style of Nintendo with the gritty glimmer of fucking Unreal Engine, and it looks really fucking garbage.
I hate how Mario 64's Unreal Engine 4 things look, because when you're in the world, the background is blurry and a solid color or of the sky, but it's like that to where the polygons are just the pixels, the way they blend in and stuff. It doesn't really catch your eye all that well. But when it becomes 4K, the background just seems such more overbearing. You're just like, I really am on the floating piece of land that just
But that's the thing about Mario 64. The more I think about it, I think because I get it. Mario 64 came out in 96, right? Or 97?
Yeah,
no,
like that.
96, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and that or Ocarina came out in 98. The thing is about like Mario 64, and what I find so fascinating about like the early 3D platformers at that time, there's sort of like this dreamy like basic kind of vaporwave kind of aesthetic, or it's just like, oh yeah, floating platform there, oh yeah, that texture is like less than 240p, and there's a lot of like this sort of dreamy art style where it's like there's not like enough polygons to give like a full design, so you start to use like your imagination, because between the step of like the Super Nintendo to the N64 to the GameCube we could start like getting more specific, like this building looks like a church, but in the other one you just had like this big brown building that has to tell you that this is a church, right? Yeah. And to me, like a good example is like I downloaded the don't try to steal my kneecaps here for a minute. But I downloaded the PC port of Mario 64 that the fans have made, which is some crazy shit, man. I don't know, even following this trend, Marcos, but some random day, some people say, hey, that classic game from the PlayStation 2, we just made a PC version of it, all native, runs on your rig, and I'm like, that's fucking amazing. Because, when you're dealing with emulation, because going back to the Majora's Mask thing, I'm basically running emulator of an N64 game, but you running with like 4K textures, but still like really good textures and like proper widescreen and everything. It looks fucking amazing. Granted, the game is still running at like barely 12 FPS, but you know, it's still a fun game that I'm enjoying my time.
Right.
But going back to the Mario 64 PC port, because it's a PC version, you have all these options like mods and things like that. And one of the cooler things that you have is you have mods. And one of the coolest mods that I saw was this project called Project Render 96, I believe. And it's this idea of, and I've always been fascinated by this, Marcos. I know maybe you had this kind of nostalgia like I do. But when you're a young kid, when you had the N64 in front of your hands and you had any gaming magazine at the time, obviously the renders that they're showing are just a cut above the rest than what you're seeing. I don't know if you've ever seen like Mario 64 renders. They look really nice. They have this kind of a charming aesthetic to it, but it's kind of like really weird and kind of vaporwave, going back to that again.
Yeah.
So what these fans did is that they realized like, okay, clearly this is what Nintendo wanted to do, but they couldn't do that because the power of the N64 can't do those kinds of polygons. So what they did was that they used the magazine scans of that Mario, and then they translated into a 3D Mario model for the PC version of Mario 64. And to me, I think it's the most faithful way to properly remake Mario 64 while keeping the aesthetic active. You know what I'm saying? Because clearly this is what they wanted to make, but they couldn't do that because obviously, you know, before everything started becoming like clickbaity as shit. Well, to be fair, that's always been like that, but that was clearly what Nintendo wanted to do, but they can't do that because, you know, limited N64 hardware. And going back to that PC port thing, so I found out, and again, not trying to shut down these projects, but these are really cool. Speaking about Zelda, I found out that there was a PC port of Ocarina of Time, and it's amazing. It looks great. It runs at 60 FPS, which is fucking amazing, and it also offers mod support. And I'm just like so excited for the future of like, oh my god, we don't have to deal with like the middleware of an emulator, because when you're really emulating a game, you are limited by the fact that you're using an emulator to emulate a system to play at HD, right?
Yeah.
And like another recent example is that, you know, I think I told you about this before we started recording the podcast. We were talking about how like games that we were playing. I'm the kind of camp that's like, if I watch like a YouTube video about like a game I really remember playing as a kid, a good example is I was watching a lot of Jak and Daxter content. Rest in peace, Jak and Daxter. You know, you lived well in the PlayStation 2. I found out that someone out of nowhere, like in the small little Jak and Daxter YouTube channel, they made a PC port of the first Jak and Daxter game, and it runs great, and it looks at 60 FPS, and it's so fucking crazy. It's just like the fans are going out of their way saying, all right, Naughty Dog, we want you to release Jak and Daxter on PC, and then they just do it themselves, and that's just crazy to me, dude.
It's one of those things where, when it comes to corporatization of anything, people will obviously the market is there, but when it comes to you know, hey, I was playing this game when I was a kid. Why can't we see a remake? I want to know how long it took for kids like us back then who played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, or who played Tony Hawk Underground. It doesn't matter. Those who played those kind of games, how long were people saying, hey, we want a remake of this game in HD, or just re-release the same game but with widescreen support, the same buggy mess of a game, but widescreen support, but like for the newer consoles. And then later, obviously, the new Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 came out. What was it, last year? I can't remember. But
yeah, the remake came out. It was actually pretty good. It was actually really good. I didn't finish it, but I did play a lot of it.
Right, and it was good. So I'm like, those are the things where like, dude, people were talking about, we want a Pro Skater, we want another Pro Skater, we want a remake of Pro Skater, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And after some time, obviously takes time to develop the games itself, because they don't really quite take the original code of the game and they just you know, brush it up, put some elbow grease on it, and there you go. Here's your 4K version of the game. No, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But other than that, like it took the community a while for like the Tony Hawk crew to actually make a game where they haven't been making Tony Hawk games for a while. So
well, to be fair though, like it died for a good reason, because Activision kept pumping these games out, and they had to keep like developing amongst themselves. There's a reason why most people kind of teetered off after I want to say either American Wasteland or by Underground 2. Me, I played, I think it was Tony Hawk 3 on the PlayStation 2, and then I went to Underground, and that was like my cap. I was like, all right, this is it. This is the most fun I had. And then Skate came along, I kind of took over that, which I'm really looking forward to the new Skate game, but I'm really concerned about the free to play model, but we'll get back to that later. Um,
I don't think it's gonna be that crazy. It's gonna be free to play, only because it's one of those things where, I love seeing the memes like, hey, you need your subscription for this game ended so you can't ollie. Like that's funny. Or you gotta pay $2.99 to learn the ollie. Like that's funny. But like, I feel like the subscription based thing is just for like, it's one of those things when it comes to any free to play game.
well, not subscription. Let's be more accurate. It's
No,
more
no,
like
no.
a
I'm talking about
freemium
like
game.
I'm talking about like if it's a free game, but you wanna keep up with the meta, keep up with everything. You gotta pay some sort of fee to like get in there. A good example is like Destiny's fun and all, but like if you want the better weapons, you want the best gear and all that stuff, you want to play the cool quests, you obviously got to pay this absorbent like price for DLC. Like it's a crazy amount of DLC, and the amount of content isn't quite crazy. The one that like the amount that they add. But either way, it's something that people will buy in droves. Meanwhile, they're just like giving you this DLC while removing previous content. It's one of those things where like, although Destiny is free to play, they get you with the DLCs, and that's
You
that's
know what? I actually could give you a really recent example. Lately I've been watching Rebel Taxi's videos on like forgotten Xbox games, like original Xbox games, because Microsoft likes to act like the original Xbox didn't count unless you talk about Halo. Because I never seen them ever mention any other
or
original Xbox game at the
yeah,
time.
or
I can't. I seriously can't think of one game they mentioned, like aside from maybe
Gears.
um N- no, because Gears was 360. I'm talking about
Okay,
original Xbox. Um, unless you want to talk about who's the guy who runs Microsoft now or the Xbox branch, Phil.
I don't know.
Well, basically the guy was just like, hey guys, like remember Voodoo Vince on the original Xbox? I love him. I brought him back as a remake. Okay, now, and that was it. That was the only reason why they did it, because he was just like, I really like Voodoo Vince. Yeah, it was a super niche platformer for the Xbox, because like most people don't talk about platformers on the Xbox unless it's fucking Conquer Live and Reloaded or fuck, what was the other one? Shit, I was another one that just came in my head, but now it just left my head. But Voodoo Vince was just one of them, and that was just like the only reason why they made it. They're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna make a new Voodoo Vince remake because I like Voodoo Vince.
Right.
But going back to fighting games though, he was talking about how the Xbox had fighting games, and I remember when I had the Xbox, the original Xbox, for not that long. I only had like maybe 2 or 3 games on it. I played Dead or Alive 3, and I love Dead or Alive 3. It's actually one of the few fighting games me and my sister actually like playing. And I was wondering, like, man, I haven't heard about Dead or Alive since like the 360 game, because I remember they had a Ryu from not Street Fighter, from fucking Ninja Gaiden, and I was wondering like what is their most recent Dead or Alive game? And then there's Dead or Alive 5 or 6, and it's really interesting because if you go on Steam right now, there is just Dead or Alive free to play, right? And I was like confused, but then when you look at the purchase or in the buy game, it says like, oh, buy or download Dead or Alive 5 Core Fighters, and then you see the laundry list of DLC, and I'm talking about like $20 of DLC just for not for a character but fucking costumes. And I realized like, oh, so that's what they're gonna go with. Okay,
Basically,
that's
yeah.
interesting. And it's just really weird because you can still buy like the full game with all the characters, but not the DLC for literally 60 bones. And I'm just like, why didn't you just release it that way then?
It's one of those things where, heck, even with Call of Duty earlier, Call of Duties, where one of the great things that at the minds of Activision at the time, hey, we're going to release a game, and we're gonna come out with 4 DLCs. The 4 DLCs will be purchasable throughout the year, but they'll come out right. And guess what? Each DLC will come with goodies and maps and maps, new content, whatever. But if you don't have it, you won't be able to play with your friends who have the DLC pack unless they disable the DLC pack. But what if there's a DLC pack that has an amazing map that you love playing, which was most often the case? Well, guess what? You have to divide the player base, and people who feel left out, they're sort of in this position where they're like, dang, I guess I gotta shell out $15 for this
Yeah,
one
I've
DLC
always
pack.
hated map packs like that. I've hated it. It's like that's when like I start losing interest in the game. Like, all right, cool. Thanks, guys. I'll skedaddle. If coming from Valve, or Valve just says, "Hey, what's up? We want some free campaigns for Left 4 Dead. Here you go." And then later on the Xbox, like, "No, you can't do that. You got to charge Microsoft points."
Yeah, that was one of the things, though. That was I'm pretty sure someone in Activision, some sort of team, and then like the projections teams who first thought about this, and then later the analytics team comes in and sees if what they were doing was correct, and I was like, hey, these are the amount of people who bought it day one. Here's the amount of people who bought it week one, and these are the amount of players who you've retained using this model of map packs and stuff. And I'm pretty sure, like, you were probably one of those people who just left the game because you didn't want to play the map packs. I mean, you don't want to buy the map packs, and everyone else is playing with the map packs. You're like, oh, what's the point? So you just left, and that's one of the things that people, I'm pretty sure, realized about AAA games. Are like, we're not gonna really support the whole or buying a whole bunch of DLCs if it's mediocre DLCs and all that stuff. That's why I'm pretty sure they pushed to the whole free
Cosmetics and
DLC.
battle pass things.
Yeah, and even
Listen,
Warzone.
I know me and Kenny probably disagreed on this, but like I'm a fervent believer that if I had to choose between optional content as far as like cosmetics versus buying map packs, I'd rather go with the former any day of the week. I'd much rather do that.
Yeah, I don't mind cosmetics whatsoever, especially if it's like a very ingenious design of it, or like it's pretty cool. The only time I really didn't like it is for some games, especially for Warzone, has as mainstream that game was, there was this Rose skin that you got like at season 5 of Modern Warfare, or season 5 or season 4 of Modern Warfare, where when you complete the battle pass, you get this lady who's a slender frame, who's wearing all black, and she can hide very well in the shadows. If you're just running around, not really checking your corners very well, you're just running around doing what you got to do, and then you peek into the corner where this person's hiding. They're not moving, and then you just keep running because you don't see anything really popping out. No colors, no lights, no nothing. And this person just shoots you from the back, and like, well, I just checked that corner. What do you mean? And it's like, well, you checked it, but you didn't really look hard enough into it. Your brain just like didn't see anything else but gray and black. So I thought, oh, everything's cool here. So yeah, it's one of those things where cosmetics really gets into like the competitive scene. But when it comes to your whole like playing games, like old school games, I can't recall the last game I played that didn't come out like last decade or this decade. That I don't remember playing any recent games that came out, in the 2000s or the 90s. I'm not sure. I don't have that nostalgia craving yet.
I do. I mean, I've been like I said, I've been playing Majora's Mask. I've been playing some classic games on emulators and stuff like that. I might actually pick up playing Jack and Dax. I'm gonna definitely try out that PC port because lately I'm kind of craving a really fun 3D platformer. Um, and that's just what I've been doing. I've been kind of like straying away from the usual stuff. But going back to like the free to play stuff, because that's definitely what's got me interested. Mainly is, have you played Multiverse yet, Marcos?
I've seen a lot of gameplay of it. LeBron's broken.
Yeah. Which is really funny because that honestly though, I was gonna make a whole mission objective to beat the shit out of anybody who plays LeBron because I hated the new Space Jam. It was so fucking awful. I'm still bitter to this day. It was so bad.
Really?
So bad.
You think
It was
bad?
awful.
Like,
It was awful. It was awful.
okay.
I can't. I listen, as someone who remembered actively pulling out my credit card to renew my HBO Max subscription just to watch this movie with my cousin because we grew up watching the original. I was just like, yep, this fucking sucked. I have never felt so marketed in my entire life. But all right, LeBron James is in the game now, so he's forever cemented into Multiverse. I'm sorry, I called it Smash.
Yeah,
but
it's platform fighter.
Platform fighter, exactly. Which here's the thing though. Like, I'm gonna just be a little bit cynical on this. Listen, I'm interested. The open beta finally came out. I was invited to do the early alpha like years ago, but I forgot about it. It's just one of those things like, oh, I'm gonna sign up for that, and then I never do it, and then like, oh, the game kind of got like this underground thing going on. But I don't know. I feel like that after Nickelodeon Smash, whatever the fuck that was called, which I eventually got, I didn't even play it. But that game,
yeah, Nickelodeon All Stars, bro.
yeah, and it was like, it was fun. It was like, oh, that'd be really funny. Let's just buy unironically. It's gonna be better than Smash Ultimate. It's like, guys, like, let's go on. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, this game's probably gonna be fun.
I thought it was going to be better in Smash, but then when I saw gameplay of it, I'm like, this animation's super stiff. I don't like it. And I didn't mind that every move was broken. I didn't mind that. It's just everything felt super stiff and super not like it felt like an indie game.
Look, let me put it like this though. I doubt that there was like this super strict timeline because this isn't like the average like movie tie-in game or something where like these. If you've been, I've been watching like a lot of YouTube videos where people talk about like, oh, let me tell you about like the 5 different games that came out for Star Wars: Phantom Menace. For not that wasn't even a good movie. There's like all these different games. I don't know if you remember like all the different game modes games they used to make for Attack of the Clones, where there's a spaceship fighter. There's a one where you play as a Jedi. There's one that's a platformer. There's one's like a fucking puzzle game or some shit.
I remember.
You know, when I saw Nickelodeon Smash, I'm like, okay, clearly this is nostalgia baiting, which is fine, but what deadline do they have to reach? But then again, everything has a fucking deadline. And when I saw the game and I noticed that there's no character voices, I'm like, oh, they're really going to have to cut corners in this game. And that's like an update they had to add to it. So I told people, like, look, I'm pretty sure it's going to be fun. I'm sure that ironically it's going to be fun for like a week. It's going to be funny. Like, oh, haha, I did the funny move towards, SpongeBob. But that's why I'm a little bit hesitant whenever I see like these big companies are coming out and saying, hey, we're going to do our own version of Smash Brothers. Because I'm going to be like, yeah, but how long are you really going to support it? And I think Multiverse might be changing that up a little bit. For one thing, though, it is a free-to-play game, which is really interesting because there's been this discussion. I remember a couple people were having about this idea because we brought up the Dead or Alive example. People were saying, like, what if fighting games were becoming free-to-play and they just offer DLC characters as the buy-in for the game itself. And I thought about that because there's two sides of the argument. One hand that says, well, if more, because a lot of people who play fighting games are mostly people that are players of fighting games, super competitive, want to do it. But if you're like me, you're more than likely the super casual fighting game fan. Like, yeah, I'll play this for like a week, but more than likely you're going to be like, all right, I'm going to wait for the game when all the DLC comes out. But in the day and age today, when a fighting game gets all the DLC come out, it's officially dead. No one has any reason to keep playing it unless they are super big fans of it. I know only a handful of people that still play Marvel Infinite because I think it's fun. But does the casual people even fucking play it?
Well, that's only true if the competitive scene only finds it fun as well. Because people will still keep playing games that have all their DLCs out, but like Smash Ultimate didn't like die out just because. Well, Smash Ultimate might be a bad example, but I think
Smash is a little bit more the exception because Smash comes out only once every console generation.
Yeah, because usually when all the DLC comes out for a game, the new game is coming around the corner. There's like rumors dropping, like credible rumors. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun and excitement. Like, oh, the new DLC character is gonna get announced. Who could it be?
Yeah, but also like, when it comes to like a game that just has all of its DLC released, there's already word about the new game being in production and all that stuff, and people are looking forward for the next game because of that, because it's part of the this perpetual cycle of like, hey, new content, and it's not really sustainable to have like what do you call it, just having this one completed game continue to be a completed game. And
you can't do the MMO marketing system for a fighting game, essentially. At some point, you're going to have to be like, hey, look, we only could develop so much for Street Fighter V that we need to just take what we learned about Street Fighter V and make Street Fighter 6.
Which, the game doesn't look all that interesting to me, Street Fighter 6.
Really? I thought you were excited. Didn't we talk about this on one of the episodes?
And I'm looking back on it, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm really not, like... I don't know. It just doesn't seem like something I'm excited for anymore. At least for a new fighting game. This is why like Multiverse is one of those things where like it's a free to play game, and it's one of those things where at least I could like it looks clean. It looks clean. It looks really, really clean and comedic. It's one of the things that I like about platform fighters that they can get away with. They don't have to be serious. They don't have to be anything. That's why I like what's this one fighting game that took a lot of inspirations from like Melee and all that stuff, that
Brawlhalla,
Slap City or something like that.
Oh, Slap City, yeah.
That one I like that. Even though it had stiff movement, but it had better movement than Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, I will say. I still liked it because it was funny. It was hilarious, and even though it didn't have the amount of voice I think Smash has, it's still something that I quite enjoyed very much, only because it was funny. But like Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl is one of those things where like it feels rigid, it feels stale, it feels whatever. So hopefully Multiverses is one of those.
I mean, like, to be fair though, I'm not, and just to clarify, I'm not saying that like just because a game is dead or no longer like in the public eye, I'm not saying that that's like, oh, it's not a good game anymore. Because look, one of my favorite fighting games is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure: A Heritage for the Future, which is this Part 3 fighting game that I've put hundreds of hours on Fightcade, which is not officially a release. It is, you have to buy a not buy, you have to download a specific emulator, join a specific old style fucking IRC chat style lobby to just challenge a person to play. And I put so many hours in that game. I love fighting games, like I said, a super casual sense, but I'm also the kind of guy that's like, man, I like to play online, and if there's just no online for the game, then that just kind of sucks. And then at that point, you got to depend on either CPUs, or you got to depend on the local scene if there is any. You know, like fucking our arcade just added Street Fighter 4, and I was like, yeah, that's really cool. They got Street Fighter 4 at the arcade, but you know, how many people are going to be playing this online on Steam, on Xbox, or even PlayStation 3?
Yeah, I miss the good old days where kids were with their collars on their shirts all popped up and they're wearing their sunglasses, right next to the fighting game machine, waiting for a challenge or calling out people to challenge. It was like, hey, let me beat you at a insert random fighting game here, like I don't know, like Mortal Kombat, whatever.
Yeah, you just be like, I'll show you I have the biggest cock, and then you just, you know, go to town on him on Third Strike. You know,
there you go. Third Strike was so freaking good.
It is good. It is really good. I really, oh well, you know, I'm really glad that 30th anniversary collection brought the game back a little bit more easier for people to play. But damn, it died hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, a bit. Mainly because,
right, because like the thing was that like with Street Fighter 3, you already had like the super like badass like super turbo HD remix on Xbox 360 that had all this, you know, extra content. But then it's like, all right, you took that off, you delisted it, and then you never released it again. And then you release just the arcade version. It's like, yeah, it's just the arcade version emulated, but it just has online play. But it just kind of died off. And I think the best way to quote it was like when the recent Capcom fighting game collection came out, the one that came with like Darkstalkers and all the like the niche Capcom fighting games that usually Capcom goes be like, oh, fuck Darkstalkers, but let's get Morgan again. Let's put it back in Marvel. Should be great, you know? Yeah. You know, there was a person in the chat, because I was watching a lot of footage of the collection, because I was generally curious, like, oh, how good is this collection? And someone brought up the point, like, oh, do you think people that play this on Fightcade are going to switch over? He's like, fuck no, absolutely not. No one is going to leave Fightcade. Fightcade has been longer than this collection even thought in the process of Capcom even thinking about, hey, we should re-release Darkstalkers again. Like, that's just not going to be. Fightcade is just going to always be a consistent thing. It's been around since, like, the early 2000s and has offered a better online solution to play classic fighting games on PC for free.
You know, I've never, as much as I like playing old school stuff, there is a point, and I want to add to like, to what you said earlier, is like if there's no like online scene or the like online function of the game, or if there is no like local scene that you can just go to and play this game, like I personally won't go for that game. Especially if it has an online, if it doesn't have an online thing, I probably won't be playing that game for much long.
But what if the online is garbage? What if the netcode is just complete dog shit?
But like, I'm talking about games in general. I'm not talking about just games. Because like, sure, as like Call of Duty is fun and all, like to some people, but like, if there really is no like online, like you're only really gonna play for like the things you like to play, which is just the basic stuff. Like just campaign, and if it's a one with zombies, you'll play zombies every now and then. Maybe if you're playing couch co-op, like you'll play that with some friends. Like other than that, like the game will die out fairly quick. That's why I really wanted to revisit like some of these single player games that I love playing, but with like a whole bunch of mods. Like one of those games is like The Witcher. I put a lot of hours into just vanilla Witcher and even vanilla Skyrim, but with mods, it's just an amazing experience that, at least with Skyrim, I haven't done in a while, but like I miss it. I kind of replay it because some of these mods are crazy, dude. Like they take the game to a whole nother universe. It's
a
funny.
Completely different game at that point.
It's actually funny. Like even the mods where like people go crazy. Like, hey, you want to play Dark Souls 3 in Skyrim? Well, here you go. It might
fucking do it.
It's rough. It's gonna be rough, but like you'll literally get this Dark Souls experience. You want to fight all the bosses and even the DLCs? Sure, right ahead. Here you go. Your shout is no longer a shout. It's now this. It's this. It's funny how they really get away with this, and I love it. And I hope it, like, that's the one thing in Skyrim that never changes. That they just, hey, new game just came out, Elden Ring. We're gonna put it on Skyrim. Here you go, buddy. And it's funny as shit.
Yep, pretty much. Well, actually, you know what? Let's actually wrap this up with a little bit of something we were talking about. I was talking about Majora's Mask, and we were talking about games from our childhood. So, you want to let's do a little bit of rapid fire because I'm genuinely curious. Like, so strict rules here. Focus on the games that you grew up playing with that you owned, not games that you borrowed or rented, unless it's a constant rental. We'll do that. I'll start. How about this? We'll do it like this. I'll start with one console, and then you do your first console, and then we'll just go back and forth. We'll paddle back and forth with it. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so my first game console I remember because I'm feeling really nostalgic. I've been playing a lot of emulators, obviously. My first game console I ever owned was a Sega Genesis, and it was the Model 3 because I was born in '95, so the system was probably pennies on the dollar. I found out later. I was like, always curious, like, why did my mom buy me a Model 3 Genesis by the time when the N64 was already out? And she already got me an N64 at that time. And the answer was just like, oh, because this is like a super cheap alternative at the time where Sega was like desperate to just make a little bit of coin. And I grew up playing the 6-pack cartridge that came with Sonic 1, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, MotoGP, Columns, and Streets of Rage.
Nice.
So I played a lot of that. I think I played Castle of Illusion, but I swear to God, I remembered the cartridge, but more than I remembered the game. Because I remember having way more fun with the game, but as an adult, as I play now, I'm like, man, this is really fucking slow. But I realized, like, oh, maybe because it's a really easy children's game. I don't know if I owned any other Genesis games. No, wait, I lie. I remember Lion King on Genesis. And yeah, anybody who could tell you that he grew up playing Lion King on the Genesis or the Super Nintendo at that time will tell you the second level was the most bullshit hardest thing ever. And it's like one of those kind of things like with Donkey Kong Country where you get to the ice level, and if your little child brain hasn't mastered timing yet, you're going to struggle with shit with the barrels. But yes, I think that was my first system, but I also had a Super Nintendo growing up with my cousin. I don't know if we were gonna count that because I technically didn't own it, but I played a shit ton of it back in the day with my cousin, like every weekend. It was like a tradition. I don't know if we were gonna count that, but no, we'll just keep it to game consoles we owned. What was your first game console, Marcos, and what are some of your games?
When it comes to games where I played games when I first owned something, it was a GameCube. But when it came to the first thing that I actually played games out of consistently, I think it was just random computer games. Because, like, I don't know who got it or who downloaded it or who did whatever, but there was this, on the computer, there was a little application that had a whole bunch of NES, SNES games on the computer. And that's one of the things that my brother and I liked going to our parents' workplace because they had video games on the computer and we'd play them. We'd play a whole bunch of NES, SNES games, and they were just there ready to play. And there's some of the games where I'm like, dang, I really want to play these games again just to get that nostalgia. But like, when it came to like playing games as a whole, it's either me playing at my cousin's house, that's my first introduction to video games, as well as these computer games or these emulated games on the computer. But the first I ever owned was GameCube. Obviously, Smash Bros. Melee was one of the games. Sunshine, Wind Waker. There were some of the games that my brother and I had when we owned the actual GameCube. Mario Party, etc., etc., etc. But owning a first console, at least in the household itself, it was the GameCube. But we didn't get a PS2 until way later. But when it comes to just games, it was funny enough. I was a PC boy at the very beginning of my life, and now here I am with just a PS5 and the PlayStation 5 and the PC.
PC.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, my computer experiences were super limited. I did remember growing up playing the PC version of Sonic 3. Yes, with the infamous music that is now the version that we have on Sonic Origins, which is really funny. I love the sort of 180 that we're doing, where it's like, man, the MIDI tracks sound awful, but then you switch over to the how it sounds like in an actual Genesis. Like, oh, it's not that bad. It's actually some charm to it. And then you like listen to the Origins and PC version, like, oh, this just sounds fucking awful.
Right.
For me, and it actually kind of brings up to another point we're going to talk about. I had the N64, and my thing was in my family, mainly my mom. She had this habit of like whenever I get a new game console, she would take away the Genesis and she'd put it away and be like, okay, Danny, the Genesis is going to go away now. You're going to play the N64 now from Toys R Us. And on the N64, I remember I had Pokemon Stadium 2. I rented a lot of games at that time. I also had Mario 64, of course. So you had to have Mario 64. What else did I had? I had Ocarina of Time. I don't know if it was the gold cartridge. I don't think it was the gold cartridge. I think it was a later re-release. But that actually brings up a good point, Marcos. And I wanted to ask you something. Has there ever been a game in your childhood that you've played a lot of, but you never beat it? You never finished it. You never got it completed. And then you didn't finish it until way later in your lifetime?
Um, a couple. I had Turok Evolution on the GameCube, and then never
Was
beat.
that also on the PS2? Because I remember my mom bought that
Probably,
for me just
probably,
because it was
yeah.
like, hey, Danny, I'm going to buy this game for you because it's $5 and I want you to just play it.
The
All
only,
right,
re-
mom, thanks.
yeah, the GameCube version was the worst released version, at least comparatively when it comes to like all the other Turok Evolution, games. But Turok Evolution for the GameCube, I never beat it legitly on my own, because there was cheats involved and all that stuff, and like you can like really easily just go into like doing heavy damage, doing this, and that. It wasn't until later when I got much older, and then I think it was in high school. And I'm like, dang, Turok Evolution was an easy ass game. Now that I'm playing through it, and I guess because the formula is very Halo esque, and the only like non Halo part of it, but even though it felt more of a challenge was just fighting dinosaurs, but even then that felt easier compared to Halo on Legendary. Um,
Well, to be fair though, like we were talking about earlier, like we were talking about how like when you're too little, when your brain hasn't fully developed, like the snow levels in Donkey Kong Country were a shitheel because your brain can't comprehend timing as well when you're that little. So I think that could be just a factor of it.
Another game, Vector Man. I had it on the Sonic Mega Collection, Sonic or Sega Mega Collection. That's what it was, where Vector
Hmm.
Man was on it, and I think it was also on the Sonic's Gem or Sega Gem Collection. Uh,
Listen, Vector Man is destined to always be in every Sega Genesis collection game ever. It's just a safe bet at
I
this point.
I really fucked with the whole stacks of it when I was a kid, and then when I grew up, I'm like, dang, I never really beat this game. And then when I replayed it, I was like, this is an easier Contra. And then I started playing it. I beat it, at least the first one. I never got to the second one, which the second one seems a whole lot more cleaner. I just never got a chance to go around beating it. But Vector Man's another one, and I think the last one, when I was a kid, I never really beat San Andreas. It wasn't until later when I first got my first laptop and I started playing games from it. I beat San Andreas, and I'm like, dang, this was pretty nice. A pretty nice ending, pretty nice everything. I essentially 100% of the game.
I've never finished a single Grand Theft Auto game on the PS2. I've always been like, I'm gonna get as far as I want in the story until I give a shit, and I'm just gonna fuck around every time I play this game.
Basically.
But I ironically don't do that now. As an adult, I ironically don't care about doing that kind of shit, which is really weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just like something maybe you grew out of or something, but it just never really appealed to me. Like, all right, I'm just gonna cause mayhem. Now I'm like, oh damn it, I accidentally killed someone. Fuck, now I gotta run away from the cops.
It's one of those things where, at least in Minecraft, I have that feeling where like I don't really need to, like, I could speed run to the very end of Minecraft and just do what I want to do, or I can just take it slow. It's like, hey, I really need this item, and the only way to get this item, I need to beat the Ender Dragon. So let me beat the Ender Dragon because I need choker boxes or I need an Elytra, and then there you go. It's one of those things where I'm just like, at least with Minecraft, I can get away with it because I can just keep on doing what I like doing. And if I have something in mind, like, hey, I need this kind of material, well, I guess I'm going under. Or hey, I need to craft potions. Oh, I guess I need this or I need that. Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's
For me, if I could think of a game in particular that I've always wanted to beat as a kid, but I never did, it was definitely Ocarina of Time. I have a lot of nostalgia towards Ocarina of Time because I was a kid who just would like run around in Hyrule Field, enjoying the music. I remember like when I was a kid, I still vividly remember this. I was sitting in my little beanie bag chair, and I had this tiny little TV. It was like the size of a DS screen, essentially at that point.
yeah.
And I remembered I would walk all the way to Gerudo Valley. Not, of course, you couldn't jump over the bridge and everything, but I remember I would just sit there with my little N64 controller in my hand and just listening to the music. And I just would sit there the entire time. And I had no reason to be in Gerudo Valley. There's nothing you could do there as a kid. And I love that game. I was so charmed by it. And I think what it was is that I finally got all the three stones, like the things open up the temple time to get the master sword. And I remembered I pulled the sword out as a kid, but I don't remember ever getting past that point. And it just always gnawed at me. And it's like, man, I love this game as a child, even though I never finished it. I need to finish it. So years later, when I went through that little retro game collector phase in my life, I made a mission to get an N64 with Ocarina of Time. And in high school, I still vividly remember this. I told myself I'm going to finish Ocarina of Time. And I did. And I finally beat the game. I remember I took a picture of it. I posted on Facebook at the time. I was like, man, years ago, I would have never got into the screen. And now I finally did now. And that's just my thing with most Zelda games. I played a lot of Zelda games as a kid, but I didn't have the patience for them, unfortunately. I was one of those kids that like get super excited. I'm interested. All right, I'm going to start playing. Then I get to a temple I'm struggling with. And then I'd be like, all right, I'm not having fun anymore. I'm going to stop playing. Most people probably would stop playing around the water temple or something like that. But
Yeah.
and that's just my thing with like with Majora's Mask. Like I was struggling a little bit with Snowhead Temple, but once I finally did, it was like, oh, that felt great, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that's why like the only Zelda games I've ever beat was Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like there's one I did portably. I don't remember. I remember. I did play Link to the Past, but I didn't get far into it because I was like, I want to play my Zelda games in 3D. I don't care about this top-down shit. Because I didn't play Link to the Past till after Ocarina of Time, so I had a little bit of a nostalgia bias towards it. Um, but yeah, that was one of like a good example. That's what I'm doing right now with like Majora's Mask. Like I think I played a little bit of it. I knew of it, but I clearly don't remember it when I was a kid. I didn't even know what Majora's Mask until I found out about the Zelda Collector's Edition on GameCube. The best pre-order bonus, in my opinion, ever.
Right. I
But
I never really. I think the only Legend of Zelda games I've actually like beaten, that I played when I was a kid, that I didn't finish when I was a kid and then played it later, much later, was I think Wind Waker. Wind Waker when I was a kid, it just got damaged. It was one of
I
those.
did play Wind Waker as a kid, but that was mainly because it was my cousin's GameCube and I borrowed it, if my memory serves me right.
Right.
I think, but we probably rented it too. We rented a lot of games back then as kids.
And with the whole blockbuster thing.
When that really mattered.
That or what was that? GameFly? Was that the service?
I had GameFly. I had, believe it or not, if I could, flex a little bit, I had both GameFly and Netflix at one point in my lifetime.
I've never used GameFly.
I did. I thought that was the greatest thing ever because my mom, oh, what's $50 for a new game? Fuck that. Wait, I could get a $10 subscription. My shit kid will play play a bunch of games. Fuck yeah. It was my way to play new release games. I had it all the way up to middle school. And then I built my computer. And I remembered, oh yeah, we still have GameFly. So I just went to my mom and like, hey mom, can you stop paying for GameFly? I don't want you to keep paying for this piece of shit.
I've I've always I've never truly understood on the whole I'm done using this thing. I might as well just turn it into GameStop or whatever and get my money for something else. I know our other co-host Kenny did that a lot, and then he would always regret selling a game because he's like, "Dang, I really want to play this game again." So he buys it again, and with that logic, right? Let's just say you turn in game A,
Skyrim. And then you bought Skyrim again. And then you bought it again and again
well,
and
you
again.
you turn in game A because you play the game already to completion. You've unlocked all the achievements, and you turn it in to get $10 to go to game B. You play game B, then you keep playing game B, then you go to game C, D, and then you're like, dang, dude, I'm in the mood to play game A again. I don't have it. Guess I'm gonna buy it. And guess what? You put more money down into the game that you already owned once, and now you're paying more money out just to play it again. I've never liked it. Even with my consoles, I still have my original, literally the original 360 that came out first thing, that the first batch of them that came out, and I've never gotten the red ring ever. I still have my GameCubes, even though some of them are defective. Those are the two main consoles I've actually owned myself, but I still have them. The only other stuff I owned, like my old PC, the only reason why I sold it was originally I was going to keep it after building this beast of a PC, but a buddy of mine, he really needed a new PC, and like I'm talking about, like the dude really needed one. Like it was. It took easily 2 minutes to start up, and he just like didn't know what he was doing, and the thing was really dirty. So I sold him my PC a little over cost of what I put money into it, and then he's happy. He got a beast of a PC compared to his other one, and one of those things where just like I've never really turned in an old thing just to get this new thing, or I've never really sold an old thing just to like buy this new thing because I don't know, maybe I'm a hoarder in that sense.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who constantly flexes like, "Oh, I never sold a single collection game of mine. I've always kept it in storage." And I'm like, "Man, when I was a kid, like I said, going back to like what my mom used to do is like, if she bought a new game console, the other one would just be gone. It would just disappear, and I wouldn't question like, "Oh no, PlayStation 2! I can't wait to play Sly Cooper on it." And then I'd be like, "Man, I want to play Sega." And then my mom would be like, "Hey, mom, where's the Sega?" And she's like, "Oh, I think it's in my closet." So I'm like, "All right, can you find it?" And then she'll find it, and when it actually turns out, "Oh yeah, I gave away your system to like some kid who needed a
Right.
system to play," and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Thanks, mom."
That was nice of you. I
Yeah, but it's been fun. Definitely a lot of nostalgia going through right now, but I think it's time to wrap. It's kind of getting a little bit late. Got stuff to do. I just want to say thank you everybody who's watching and listening to the DKM podcast. If you haven't yet, feel free to subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. As you guys know, you can watch or listen to us both on YouTube and on your favorite streaming services like Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you haven't yet, feel free to join our little Discord server. We would love to have you in our tiny little community. And just want to say thank you so much for giving a watch and listen. Take care now and stay safe. See you next time.